how are you? Hope you're doing well. I've not been around for a while. I've been busy writing. I'm writing a book, leading sustainable innovation, so that's going well. And I've missed being with you all actually, so it's really good to be back. I'm looking forward to the show. This one is all about scenario planning, so it's really following on from the theme of strategic visioning, horizon scanning, and so on. So it fits into that. We've been talking about that before Christmas, and there are some other materials on the YouTube channel, the Big Bang Partnership YouTube channel, that you can have a look at. But today we're focusing specifically on scenario planning because I think it sounds straightforward to do, but sometimes people find it more difficult in practice. And also what I find from my experience is that sometimes people's approach to scenario planning is a little bit one-dimensional. It's sort of, let's think about what could happen in the future, different variations of that, and what are we going to do with it? And it can be that, but there are some nuances to it. So if you want to do scenario planning for your business, and maybe you want to facilitate it with a group or lead a group through a session, then I hope that today's tips and approaches will help you. So brilliant. It's good to be here and lovely to see you all, as I say. Get your comments and questions and thoughts coming in. I'd also love to hear how you're doing scenario planning. Are you doing it at all? And if so, how? And we'll be back in 1 second just after this.
This is the Idea Time Show with Dr. Jo North, helping facilitators expand their creativity, confidence and impact through the power of innovation in action. Gain confidence as a facilitator, confidence with the technology, and confidence with your content and event design. Tune in every week for practical tips, strategies, and interviews that will accelerate your personal and business success. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jo North.
Hi there, so welcome. We are here, we're off. We are talking about scenario planning, and a big welcome. It's lovely to see you all. I can see I've got all sorts of people joining. I'm streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube and Facebook. I can see somebody's watching on Facebook and left me a comment, which is lovely, saying, "Hi Jo, just joined, lovely to see you. Sorry for the Facebook privacy settings and so on. I can't see who you are, so let me know." And this might be the same person, but hello. The same person saying, "I hate to admit I've not heard of scenario planning." That's okay. I'm going to explain what it is. We're going to kick off with that and how it's useful. I'll give you some ways of using scenario planning and some of the insights it can give you and help you turn the theory into practice. So hopefully something that you can use. And some tools and processes as well. Oh, lovely. It's Ian Anderson Gray. Hello, Ian. How fantastic to see you. That's really good. I've been watching some of your lives as well. They've been really helpful. So thank you. Brilliant. Okay. So let's get started then. Scenario planning, what is it? Well, essentially it means creating different scenarios, different narratives, different views, versions about what the future could possibly look like. And each is based on different assumptions, different variables, different factors. So it's thinking about, which way could the future go? Because it's not likely that we're going to get it right. It's hard to try and predict it, isn't it? And it's hard to try and specifically forecast it. So what scenario planning does is it enables you to think about a number of potential scenarios that could be reasonably probable so that you can get ahead and plan for them. So it's not like traditional forecasting, which is using the past to create pretty much a straight line, build in some new things that we know and create a single trajectory into the future. This is about being more agile and more responsive than that. So I find it a lot more useful. So I hope that's okay as a definition. That's all it is. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as scenario analysis. Essentially, scenario analysis is the bit that you do up front, and then the planning is how you choose to use that analysis, the actions you're going to put in place as a result of doing it. I do hope that made sense. I think I sort of followed myself there but I hope that makes sense. So ways you can use it, times that you can use it. You can use it externally to think about external scenarios, things that are going to change in your external environment outside your organisation. So that could be to think about different competitor scenarios or changes to the economy, society, all of those sorts of things. And also you can use scenario planning to think about, well, what if we did this differently inside the organisation, inside the business? What would that create? What sort of future might that look like? So you can use scenario planning for things like sustainable innovation and development when you're thinking about doing something new, creating something new. For strategic decision making, of course, I think that's what scenario planning is most often associated with. For market analysis, so what if we invested lots of money in this market, in this geography, and less money over here? What would that do to the business? Or what if we really thought about this type of consumer versus that, or this type of B2B client versus that one? So it's things like that. Product process planning, and also used quite frequently, of course, for operations and contingency planning. So this is about what if scenarios. What if this were to go wrong? What are some of the risks that we might encounter, and how might we mitigate or plan for those risks? So just to stop and summarise then, scenario planning, it's just about creating a number of alternative probable scenarios that could well happen in the future. And then you're using those to strengthen your business for things like planning your strategy, developing new products, services, innovations, and thinking about how you can strengthen and the resilience of your business, those sorts of things. Okay. So any questions or suggestions as we go through, let me know and I'll pick them up. I'll answer everything that you ask as best I can. And also, if you're watching on replay as well, still please do comment and ask questions, because I answer everything. It's nice to hear from you. Now, we can't talk about scenario planning, I don't think, without mentioning Shell. Shell are renowned really for many things. But from a scenario planning perspective, they've been doing this since the 1970s. There was a massively quickly changing, volatile energy market, and there were lots of oil shocks, geopolitical tensions arising as a result of that. So Shell was saying, okay, well, what if it could go this way or that way, and creating these different pictures so that they could plan accordingly. This is all about planning to be agile. We call it dynamic capability, where you're building that agility into your business model. And Shell carries on, still uses scenario planning today for all sorts of things like energy markets, energy security, and so on. And I love this quote. They say that their work stretches minds, confronts assumptions, and helps people think differently about the world around them. And that's the whole point of scenario planning. It's not about getting, a crystal ball and accurately predicting the future. If we could all do that, we'd all be lottery winners, wouldn't we? And so on. But it's not about that. It's really about stretching your thinking, driving innovation, and making sure that your business is moving forward in the way it needs to, based on how the world is going. And Shell themselves say our scenarios are not predictions about the future. We do not have a crystal ball, and they are not Shell strategy. So the scenarios themselves are not strategy. The scenarios inform the strategy. So I think that's important, and it's really interesting. And so why do scenario planning, and why do it for your business? Because I think this is really useful. Whether you are a solopreneur, whether you're in a big public sector organisation, maybe a corporate or a startup, you can use scenario planning to really strengthen your business and help your business grow faster. It helps you to anticipate change, manage risk, stay resilient, pick up opportunities that others might be missing. It helps you with stakeholder engagement, because, as we'll go on to find out, it's really important to engage key stakeholders in your scenario planning process. It helps you work out what resources you're going to need and how you're going to manage them. It makes you think about any regulation, legal changes that are coming up, and get ready for those. and it gives you competitive advantage. Essentially, to survive and do well, every business needs to stay relevant and stay ready. And that's what scenario planning helps you to do. So, do you do scenario planning? Let me know. The thing about it is that it's a great combination of data and human insight, human experience, and human creativity. And scenarios are this combination of facts and perceptions. So, when you're doing scenario planning, that can be challenging, but you need diversity of people, diversity of perspectives, great stakeholder engagement so that you can get lots of different points of view to inform your thinking. And think about three horizons. Now, this is I was talking about this with some great people today. Actually, this seems obvious when you say it, but we don't often think of it like this. And actually, when you start to break it down, what I'm about to say starts to get really quite interesting and thought-provoking, I think. If you think of things, the future in three horizons. So horizon one is today. It's business as usual, and business as usual today will eventually be superseded by new ways of doing things. And then we think about horizon three. So yes, I know I've missed horizon two, but we're going to go to horizon three next. And horizon three is the long-term successor of business as usual. So it's the future, right? It's the future it's quite a bit further off. And in between those, we've got horizon two, which is the transition from what we're doing today, the business as usual today, to the future tomorrow. Yes, that's really obvious. That's really straightforward, isn't it? But when we start to think about that and break it down some more, horizon one is interesting because sometimes some of our activities in horizon two, which is the transition time, things are changing, the world is changing all around us. Look at AI, look at geopolitical change, climate change, I could keep going. So the world is changing, but sometimes businesses spend too much time in horizon two trying to protect business as usual today, instead of actually using their opportunity to build forward and move into what the new future looks like. So when we're thinking about scenario planning, we are really picking up on what's likely to happen in scenarios to get us to horizon two and beyond to horizon three, and then we can start creating our own horizon two. So think about horizon three and think about what that means in terms of what might be coming next en route to getting there. And of course, this is always changing and it's always emergent. And people who have a horizon three mindset and are moving forward towards that and always staying current and relevant in their businesses are the ones that generally succeed. And if you want to know more about these three horizons, there's lots more. Have a look at the International Futures Forum. Just Google that with three horizons, and there's loads of good resources there for you if that's something you want to pursue. Because, of course, the further out we look into the future, as the Futures Cone shows us, if you're familiar with that model, we think we've got sort of almost like a straight line into this projected future. But as we've been finding out over recent years, haven't we, more so than ever, that projected future is quite something. It's unlikely to be that nice straight line. So there are different versions of potential futures, and what scenario planning does is it helps you to work through what some of those more plausible, possible and probable scenarios might look like and how your business can deal with them. And of course, you need to be looking all the time at, what are the key drivers of change in your business, in your environment, in your markets, with your customers, with your competitors, and thinking about how political, economic, social, technological, environmental and legal changes are driving those different scenarios. Now, have a look at, I've got a video and resources on horizon scanning on the Big Bang Partnership YouTube channel. So have a look at that if you want to go into that in a bit more depth. So when we're thinking about horizon scanning, right, so what we need to do in the group is make sure that this key driver analysis is happening. So get them to think about what are the changes that they're seeing and are thinking will be really important in terms of creating challenges or opportunities for the business in the next 3, 5, maybe 10 years or longer. I find that 3 to 5 years, particularly 5 years max in general, is a time frame that most people can sort of get their heads around. Depends what sector you're in. Sometimes you'll need to do longer than that. And sometimes 5 years is too far out. So pick the one that's right for you. And get these down. Think about what these changes are and be really clear about them. And any data that you've got, any information, reports, evidence, insight, stakeholder feedback, use that as well. So start with what's going on in the world. And then start to play around with scenarios by developing some what if questions. And because this is what scenario planning is all about, really. It's saying, well, what if this happened? And what if this occurred? And what if the world went in this direction? So some good prompts that you can use, and these are suggestions, you don't need to use all of them, maybe pick one or two approaches that resonate with you, are thinking about future headlines. So what might the future headline be in this time, in 5 years' time, in 3 years' time? What might we be talking about? What might the media be saying? What might be the big themes trending on social media, if indeed there is such a thing as social media in 10 or 15 years? Who knows, right? Another thing you can do is to think about, ask your team or think about yourself, your key customers, your most important customers right now, and the ones you want to stay with, build with, and grow with. What are their trajectories? Where are they thinking that their own businesses are going to head? And what does that mean for them? And therefore, what does that mean for you in terms of how you might need to support them and how you might need to change and evolve to help your customers do that? So thinking about your key customer trajectories is important and is a really good way in. Another alternative is to do a pre-mortem analysis, which is thinking about, well, if we're not here in 5 years or if we're struggling, what might the reasons for that be? And you think about the reasons for that and then work backwards and say, well, okay, so here are some things then that we need to tackle now in order to avoid that. So that reverse thinking drives out ideas in a different way. You can do trend exchange. So you get people to think about different trends that they can see emerging and that they think are going to be important, and then come up with a number of what if questions around trends. And you can also use game theory principles. So what do I mean by game theory? Well, essentially that's thinking about the world that you're in as different players that have interdependencies, and then making moves according to what goes on around them. So that competitor might put up a price, or that raw material, might be less available, and how's that going to change the shape of everything, and how might people respond? So that could be a really interesting way of driving out some good scenario insights for you to work with. And you can think about that for collaborators and competitors and what they might be thinking about doing in the future as well. So I do hope this is okay. I hope it's making sense. It's quite, as I say, I wanted to do like a quite in-depth look at scenario planning. So this is probably a bit more detail on one thing than we'd normally do. But I just think this is such a useful tool, and I see it done so one-dimensionally. What's the potential future look like? It could be this, this, or this. Okay, what do we need to do about it? That's fine, but it could be so enriched and done so much better, I think, with groups, and in a more interesting way as well. Now, if you're thinking about what if questions for your scenario planning, and you can do them with the groups, as we've just said. You can also either do this on your own or get groups to do this too, and that's ask AI to generate some ideas and possible scenarios for you. So ChatGPT, chat to it. It is a chat thing, isn't it? So I just asked it, for instance, please give three potential scenarios based on real data for the usage of alternative clean fuels in UK homes over the next 5 to 10 years, right? And it's given me 3 scenarios. It gave me Scenario 1, accelerated adoption of electric heat pumps. Scenario 2, emergence of hydrogen blends in gas networks. Scenario 3, growth in, I'll do that again. Scenario 3, growth in biomass energy utilisation. And there's an explanation there as to why it's given each of these scenarios. So the background, the development, the outcome, along with some data. Now, I'm not saying that you should think these scenarios are well informed or correct. Please do not do that. Please don't rely on this stuff. But it's just really useful to give you some ideas. And maybe you could get your groups doing this as well, using AI prompts and then talking about the scenarios and using them. Okay, so to think about scenarios for scenario planning, we've got asking, thinking about what if questions in groups in a workshop environment, things like future headlines, key customer trajectories, pre-mortem analysis, trend exchange, game theory principles, and maybe you could weave in a bit of AI and you could combine the two. You could use some of the other techniques with putting them into an AI and seeing what pops out to challenge your thinking even further. And out of all of that, you're going to have lots and lots of stuff. And then it's about starting to converge and bring it all in and thinking about what is the most realistic scenario in your view, based on the information that you have. And all information, you're never going to have enough information to know for sure, but based on the best you can do in the time available, what's the most realistic scenario? And get that written down. What's the worst case scenario, the most pessimistic that you think is still realistic? And if that makes sense, you've got the realistic, the one you think you're going to have, and then pessimistic, which is a sensible pessimistic, and then a sensible optimistic. So you've got three different scenarios there to work to. And what that does is it gives you sort of a range, it gives you a bandwidth to operate within. So when you're thinking about your financial planning, the resources you need, how many you're going to have to make of something, all of those things, you can start to get a range to say, well, we think this looks like the top end, this looks like the bottom end, we think it's really going to be somewhere, in the middle, round about here. But then you can decide, well, can you tolerate the worst case? And would you be able to manage the demand and everything else that comes with the most optimistic case? And you can play tunes on that accordingly. So please do prioritise, because you could have all sorts of scenarios. I'm sure there's a mathematician somewhere that'll tell me that this statement is mathematically incorrect. I don't know, but I imagine there's an infinite number of possibilities for future scenarios, right? So do keep it practical, keep it pragmatic. Less is more. So focus on a few and focus on the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on your business should they occur, and that you are, medium to high level of certainty that they could actually occur, right? So level of impact, think about the right level of certainty so that you're not spending time really working on something that would have little significance on your business and or is probably never, ever going to happen. You've only got limited time to run your business, so focus on what matters and what is most likely in your view based on the info that you have. And then simply get your scenarios all written up, and I suggest that you use a template. I have a template which is the scenario name, so just give it a title. The scenario type, is it one about resilience? Is it something about innovation? A description of the scenario, so all the things that you've assumed, all the the data insights that you've collated, not all of them, but a summary of all of those, and then get into the implications of this scenario on your organisation, what it will mean on any projects or key projects that you're running. What's driving and causing this scenario to take place. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you've got a scenario where there is a decline in demand for your product. drivers and causes of that scenario could be there's a shortage of raw materials. It could be that technology changes and makes your product less attractive. All of those things. So, or any of those things and more. So get those down, and also get down the probability that this scenario will happen. Is that a high probability or is it a low probability, and why? Hopefully it's medium to high, otherwise you wouldn't be writing your template up. And then what's really, really important is to get in there the summary of your key insights and actions. Essentially, this means, so what are you going to do about it then? What are you going to do now to start to get ready should this scenario occur? And that's what you're going to do now could simply be you're going to keep an eye on it. Yeah, you're going to watch it really, really closely and see how it develops. Or it could be that you're so confident that there's something in this scenario that you start to invest a bit of time, resource, and effort, and just make some headway in getting ready for that scenario. But I would have a number of these templates completed for different scenarios around for your business. And don't forget, you want your optimistic version, the realistic version, and the pessimistic version of each of these. Okay, so you should have a number of these. And then you'd think that's job done, wouldn't you? You've thought about your what if questions and about what's going on in the world and what's likely to happen and how it might impact you, and then created these scenario summaries. But actually it's not quite there, because for scenario planning to be meaningful and not a set of documents with a few actions attached that you start to move forward and then get into business as usual, and all the scenario planning falls by the wayside, you need to be constantly scanning and updating your scenario plans. So set up a monitoring system, so a team or a person or someone who's going to put their hand up and go, yep, I'll do that. And maybe it's spread across different people. Somebody's going to monitor the changes in tech, somebody else is going to monitor changes in energy or whatever it is, and track what's going on in the scenarios, and be clear about what might trigger a change. What might change the scenario up? Is it an increase in price or availability or something like that? It's good if you can actually bring this analysis together in one place and have all your information together, so that you can see for each scenario what's going on with it and where is it going in the way that you expected it to, or is it doing something different? So you can see that at a glance. Okay. Identify trigger points. So think about what events, trends, or data points mean that you're going to have to update the scenario. It's going in a different direction, could be better or worse, but it's going in a different direction from what you thought, and regularly review it. So put some time in. It could be every month or 6 months or year, it depends on your business, to make sure they're still relevant. Keep stakeholders informed, keep close to stakeholders, and use the intelligence that you get from your connection with different stakeholders to get information and insight of what they're seeing in this space as well. Keep revising them and make sure that any changes to your scenarios and changes to action plans are well communicated and understood. Now, if I'm running a scenario planning workshop, I get people to think about what they're going to do with the scenarios and how they're going to manage them beyond the workshop, right? So I do encourage you to do that as well. Don't create the scenarios and then go, okay, so what are we going to do with these then? Build this in to what you're doing so that you have a really holistic view. And it feels like something that you're not just doing one-off, for, now and again and checking in, but that you are committing to constantly staying relevant, constantly staying updated, and making sure that your business has the right dynamic capability to do well, whatever the scenario is that materializes in the real world. So I hope that's helpful. I just want to say a couple of things about digital twins. Because digital twins are amazing tools that can do a lot of scenario planning using AI, tech, big data, and I think it's not for everyone and every situation, every business, but just to say that these are, really useful if you've got really, really big projects or big things that you're looking at. Digital twins can be well worth that investment. Probably not for smaller things, and for small businesses, it depends really. You'll have to have a look at it. But a digital twin essentially is a physical asset or environment replicated virtually. So, and it's constantly updated with data from its physical twin. So there's a physical version, the real version, and there's a digital replica of that. And the digital replica is constantly getting data from the real thing. And what it's doing that is it's analysing what's happening, monitoring, run it, and you can run simulations. So you could ask it lots of what if scenarios, and it will work through those scenarios and help you with the likely outcomes of them. So it means you can do things virtually without having to do them in the real world, and you can learn from doing them virtually before you do them in the real world and get really good insight from them. And it's probably it is the subject of a separate show, and I'll do that in another session in the future. But this is really growing. It's the market for digital twins is already over $5 billion US dollars, and it's expected to be worth $95 billion by 2033. So that's quite a growth rate, So look, scenario planning, thinking about this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world that we are in, and managing through that and navigating through that is really a key business skill. Whether you are an entrepreneur in a small business and a startup, and whether you're a solopreneur, a public sector organisation, or a big corporate or a university, then these things really do matter. So they affect us all. So I hope this has been useful. And I know it's probably a little bit more complex and in-depth than normal, as I've said, but I hope it's been useful nevertheless. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Go over to bigbangpartnership.co.uk/resources for lots of free stuff. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, or even if you're not watching on YouTube, but would like to in the future, please do subscribe. When I last looked, I'm about 989 subscribers on YouTube, and lovely things happen when you hit 1,000 to the algorithm and otherwise. So if you're not subscribing, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, because it really helps me get this free content out to more people. Thank you for watching. I'll be back next time. See you very soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the Idea Time Show, brought to you by Dr. Jo North. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and access more completely free resources at bigbangpartnership.co.uk/resources. We'll see you next time.